Thank you for joining us, and welcome to the premiere of the We Are All Music Foundation's Power of Music series. For the next hour, we'll be discussing a variety of issues around music's role in today's social change. My name is David Zussman, and I am the co-chair of the We Are All Music Foundation. And I'm here with my co-moderator, Michael Solomon, who is also a founding member of our Board of Trustees. Our panel members are heads of 4 top music nonprofit organizations who are making a profound impact in the lives of so many individuals and communities. This will be a unique opportunity to learn, discuss, and see from the inside how the power of music can play a vital role in America's future. The We Are All Music Foundation is the central philanthropic foundation for music nonprofits that support social causes in underserved communities, education, and health and wellness. The WAAM Foundation's mission is to provide meaningful support to the most impactful nonprofit organizations who use the power of music to improve lives and benefit society. We provide sizable and transformative grants over time and also work closely with each music nonprofit to help them succeed in their mission by developing collaborative initiatives and guiding best practices. The We Are All Music Foundation vets, evaluates every program's effectiveness, reach, and sustainability, making sure every dollar is invested in the most impactful way. We recently received 288 applications for the grants that we will make this September, an incredible number and from some amazing organizations, all of which should be proud that they are trying to make a difference in these challenging times. Check out this short video on the We Are All Music Foundation, which also includes content from all of the fantastic organizations on the panel today.
Music gives a soul to the universe, wings to the mind. Music inspires, music comforts, and music heals us. Music stimulates, challenges, and enriches young people in their formative years. Simply listening to music, singing, or learning to play an instrument fosters creativity, cooperation, and unites communities. Our mission is to provide meaningful support to the most impactful nonprofit organizations that are using the power of music to improve lives and benefit society. Often there's no way for donors to accurately measure the return on charitable donations. The We Are All Music Foundation was created to help solve these giving challenges by providing thorough vetting, tracking, and reporting of the charitable organizations and initiatives we support. Out of the thousands of music-related nonprofits that exist, we actively seek the best-in-class nonprofits across education, health and wellness, and underserved communities, and give significant financial support to the most deserving. We believe in the power of music, and we're ready to change the world, one note at a time. Are you ready to join us?
I'm going to now turn it over to our panel members to briefly introduce themselves and their organizations. Melissa.
Hi, I'm Melissa Walker, founder and president of Jazz House Kids. We are in our 18th year, which has me in awe every time I say that. To be an organization solely dedicated to jazz 365 days a year is quite a feat. And for 18 years, our young people have been soloing and swinging to greatness. And our mission is to transform lives so kids can gain the artistic edge that they need to go wherever they want to go. Obviously on the bandstand and off the bandstand. Jazz House Kids really works in 3 areas. It works in underserved school districts, in the community, which now is being redefined in this pandemic. Also through community programming and concerts. We do over 100 concerts a year, including the Montclair Jazz Festival, which reaches about 20,000 people, and internationally through a lot of live streams. You know, some of the work that we have done in these three areas are to make sure that kids have what they need to bridge the gap in the arts. And these extraordinary arts representatives and leaders that are here today all know about that gap and the power that is served through that. And when you close that gap, you will find, as we have, that you can reach numbers of 100% of your young people going to college. You can reach, as we have, over $2 million in scholarships and more. You can have a pipeline to college, to top institutions, as we have with 5 to 10 people each year at Juilliard, for example. You can have a pipeline of putting instruments in the hands of kids. David Wish, no one does that better than you. Those are the kinds of things that we have been about. But when you offer, as we have, a robust offering, what that means, as the NEA defines it, is that you're offering 90 minutes or more of arts education a week to young people. As you can replicate that more and more, you will see that 4 to 5 times improvement in areas such as retention, staying in school, and so forth. So our job at the Jazz House, it's a simple notion, is that we can bring people together through this truly American art form, now embraced by the world, so they can be their better self. And that's what we do at Jazz House.
Excellent. Dave Wish, would you like to go next?
Sure. Well, Melissa, I didn't realize we were the same age. Just another reason that I love you so much. So we're also 18. We're in our awkward adolescence. Little Kids Rock restores, expands, and innovates music education in public schools around the United States. We work in schools that don't have music programs to start new ones. Schools that do have programs, we work to expand, because oftentimes they're reaching a minority of the students, or a very small percentage of the students. And the innovation part is, I think, what we're perhaps best known for. We take the music that is the sort of the lingua franca of American life, American popular music, rap, rock, R&B, Latin, and pop, and we bring it into the school. Now, these musics have traditionally not been taught in schools, and I'll talk more about what the implications of that are and why that may or may not be. And the last thing I'll just sort of say is we provide schools and teachers and communities with the following. We train teachers to run music programs that focus on culturally sustaining, culturally relevant music. We give them the curriculum that they need. We give them instruments that they need for their classroom, and then we network them in the community. So we have a network of close to 3,000 schools that we work with in 43 states. And it's just really a pleasure to be here with Dr. Williams and Pete and of course, Melissa. Thank you.
Excellent. Pete, maybe you can go.
Great. Well, thanks so much for having us. Musicians on Call is the leading provider of live music to hospitals in America. So we've been doing that for 21 years now, and have performed at the bedsides of over 850,000 people in those 21 years. Doing one-on-one intimate performances. And when Musicians on Call was started, 21 years ago, I think the idea was a way to bring some relief to people in hospitals, to break up the day a bit. And since then, the research has caught up, and I know we'll be talking about that a bit today. And now the work that we do, as well as the my fellow companions on this panel, is changing people's lives and we're now able to measure that this music is helping people heal and is part of the healing process. So Musicians on Call is continuing to grow all around the country, and we're just grateful to continue to bring the healing power of music to so many people.
Great. And Dr. Williams.
Hi, so I'm Dr. Williams. I'm a tenured professor of neurology at Columbia University. I'm also the founder of Hip Hop Public Health. We've been around for about 15 years, and we're a health equity focused public health nonprofit. We believe at Hip Hop Public Health that while music has been described as a bridge between heaven and earth, we believe that music is the bridge between health behavior change and our inner city streets. And we focus on health behavior change in many different domains, ranging from COVID-19 behaviors all the way through to childhood obesity.
Great. Thanks very much. Well, thank you all again. Let's move on to our discussion. So for some questions, we will just ask one or two of the panelists to weigh in, and others we'll ask all of you. And for those watching, if you have questions, email us at info@weareallmusic.org. We'll be taking some of them in our final 10 minutes. So let's go on to our first question here. We all know that music can change lives, provide hope, but what specific statistics, studies, real life examples can be cited? Often music has been talked about as a nice to have, but it really is a must have. Where can we, let's talk about that a little bit more. Maybe Melissa can start us off.
Yeah, I mean, the power of music is certainly undeniable, and there is, as Dr. Williams is you eloquently outlaid for us, there is more and more evidence in research from major institutions and universities of the positive impact of music. Of course, I think the joy of music is undeniable. I think a day without music would be a day without sunshine. But when you really look at the statistics of what it means in the mapping of the brain that happens, which is very much like language and math, you really start to see that music matters. There's really great studies out there that it equips students with the foundational skills to learn, and it will bolster their engagement, and it really develops those essential lifelong successes, that they need to achieve in any field. I just look at, for example, when we look at the work of the Jazz House, we saw that students in our school districts, they are 5 times less likely to be expelled and be suspended. They are 30 times less likely to be tardy. Their graduation rates are often 15, 20% higher than those students that are not receiving a robust music education program. When you start to replicate that and understand that every student who graduates, the increase in terms of their college success, their civic engagement as voting, their first time job that is often $10,000 to $15,000 more in just 1 year. Of those students who had a robust arts education, who then graduated in our schools in Elizabeth, in New Jersey, for example, 71% to 88%. So that gap, or that improvement, you then multiply that by going to college and then coming out of that institution with a $10,000 to $15,000 increase from those who did not have the arts experience. You start to see how the arts really impact the economy, our need to have civic servants, as well as the well-being. And so we have found at the Jazz House that when we wrap the student in a really a robust 360-degree program, which for us means it's music, it's mentoring, it's education, and it's leadership. And there is a program around every one of those pieces, then you start to see 100% of your students getting through school and 100% of your students getting through college. For a number of students coming from communities, underserved communities, just getting through high school and college, which is really an untapped area we don't talk about, which is, could you get through college? Because many of those social services don't exist for them. But we've built a really robust alumni program that brings the alumni back to mentor other young people, to then gain other teaching and training services themselves, as well as a social network. Because we realized early on in this that we got them through high school along with their village, but when they got to college, they really struggled because it was gone. And that's an area that we should be really, I think, also as arts leaders, really thinking about and talking about.
Absolutely, absolutely. Pete, maybe you can talk a little bit more.
Yeah, so on a different side of the spectrum than where Melissa works, we're working inside hospitals to bring music to three audiences generally: patients, caregivers, and family members. And we really focus on those three areas because those are all communities within the hospital that are dealing with high stress, high anxiety, pain, and just very difficult situations in their life. I mean, honestly, a lot of times when we go visit patients in hospitals, they're literally going through the worst day of their life. And so when we go into their rooms bringing music, what we're hoping to do at the very least is to provide some distraction, a little break in their day, because we know that as patients and their families are in hospitals day in and day out, the monotony of that experience can have an effect on people's mental health and their general outlook. And so when we go in there, it's amazing because there's studies which I'll mention, but the biggest thing that we see is somewhat anecdotal, where you go into a room and there's not a smile on someone's face. They're really stressed out. And 3 or 4 minutes later, just because of the work of a volunteer and the impact of a song, the entire mood and energy of the room has changed. And now, speaking of research, there's been countless studies, especially in the past 10 years, that have shown that music is not just providing that anecdotal change that we witness, but it's actually helping patients deal with stress. It's lowering stress levels. It's lowering blood pressure. It's helping people with pain management. I mean, there were studies just in the last 2 years done by Cambridge that looked at pain management amongst cancer patients, and that music was very effective in lowering the pain that they felt, or the pain levels of burn victims. And so what's interesting now is we're getting to a point, and we've seen this evolution across the history of musicians on call, that music is going from a place of, well, that's a nice thing to do, isn't that a nice thing to offer in the hospital, to actually part of the healing process, and actually something that hospitals are using to say, this is part of the 360-degree experience that we want to provide for patients to help them heal. And so in that sense, I think in the beginning of our organization's history, we were knocking on doors saying, hey, let us in. This is going to be a great opportunity for everyone in the hospital. And now we're in a situation where we're trying to figure out how we can deal with the demand, not only here in America, but around the world. And so we're working on that, and we've really stepped up to the challenge and have grown exponentially. But I think the opportunity is huge right now, and people are seeing it, that music is actually part of the healing process, and we're excited to be the leader in that movement.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Dr. Williams, maybe you could add to that as a professional and in your organization, what statistics have you seen? What impacts have you been making? And where do you see that all going?
Sure. So I'm going to be brief because I can spend a long time on data and statistics, but just want to begin by saying that many people don't really know that as a species, as a human race, music and meaning in music came to us long before meaning given by words. Music is a language of feeling. And the truth is that we are all what we feel, not what we think. In fact, studies have shown that during musical experiences, changes are actually seen in blood flow within the brain to areas linked to our reward circuits, motivation, arousal, and even powerful emotions. And so what we did is we leveraged this neuroscientific power of music to create a program called Hip Hop Stroke. And then through some NIH funding, we designed a randomized controlled trial involving 3,000 fourth graders, fifth graders, and sixth graders, and 1,000 of their parents. And we found, and we have published this, We actually published several papers on this program, but we found that music not only inspired children to teach their parents about something so emotionally sterile to them initially before the program, a stroke, but it also inspired great courage in these children who actually ended up saving the lives of their parents and their grandparents who were actively having strokes in front of them. So therein lies the tremendous power of music.
Yeah, just incredible, incredible. And Dave, maybe you can talk about some things that you've seen through your organization.
Sure, I'll be brief. We did a study with Teachers College of Columbia on the impact of our program on kids, and found things that were similar to what Melissa's talked about and what other folks are: decrease in behavior issues, increased sense of citizenship, and I would also direct your listeners to the Clearinghouse of Clearinghouses for data and statistics related to the impact of music on people, which is NAMM.org, NAMM.org, scads of them. What I'd like to offer is actually something that just occurred to me listening to about the beautiful work of Dr. Williams and Pete and Melissa, which is that it's funny to have an argument, or even to have any kind of, there is no debate as to whether music is good for people, as to whether it impacts them profoundly. Ask the advertising industry, ask the movie industry. The impact of music on humans as a positive, that's irrefutable. I actually think the bigger question is we know that music is good for people. I think the bigger question that we have to ask ourselves right now, especially, is, do we really care about people? Do we care about every member of our community? That's the bigger question, because it's really hard to actually make an argument, and I'd love to hear it persuasively made, that music somehow is not something that changes us almost down, as Dr. Williams said, to, and perhaps even down to sort of some sort of, deep physiological level. So, and I think that for all of us that work in music, we know the power of music to build community and empathy and et cetera. So to me, that's almost the stronger question. We have to ask ourselves, why do we live in a country? Why do we live at a time where perhaps we don't, even though we know how good this is for all of our fellow citizens, why are we not committed to ensuring that all of our fellow citizens and their children have it?
Wow, that was spot on and could not have been a better segue for our next question. As you just said, do we care about our citizens? Do we care about people? Where are we on this? And this is the other question that we're going to pose to all four of you, because it's so vitally important. And this is about the Black Lives Matter movement, and it's front and center, and the reasons behind it are, as vitally important as anything. And I want to put the question to you guys about, what role do your organizations have in addressing this, and what changes do you plan to make in response to this? I mean, I know having an inside view with some of you guys that, this has been a really interesting journey in learning about and sort of awakening to things that we were doing that we weren't doing perfectly. And I'm really excited to sort of dive into this part of the conversation. I suspect at some point we'll do a whole episode just on this topic, but we're not there yet. Dave, since you segued so perfectly, would you kick us off on that?
Sure. Yuval Harari, who's sort of a historian and philosopher, said that crises have a tendency to speed up historical processes. And we have multiple crises that we're facing right now. I won't enumerate them for anyone who's been awake for the last 6 months or whatever it's been. It's pretty obvious. Talking about Black Lives Matter, particularly, obviously as part of a centuries-long struggle against white supremacy, colonialism, indigenous genocide, et cetera, that the country is based on. So it's not sort of like, oh, and now there's this new thing that, Black Lives Matter, it's a continuum. You can't oppress people and disenfranchise them without them resisting and being horribly upset and horribly impacted. And it's horrible for the entire society. So that aside, specifically, what Little Kids Rock addresses and has been addressing for many years is representation in music education. If you take these genres that I just said, the most popular musical genres in the United States today are rap in order: rap, rock, pop, Latin, R&B. 5 genres that collectively make up for 76% of the music that all Americans of all races, ages, and classes listen to. Now, if that music is excluded from state schools, it tells you something interesting. When you look at those musical forms and you think that they primarily come from Black and brown communities, it tells you something yet again. And I'll close by saying that I think it was like, I forget, Rachmaninoff or one of those people said that, music is enough for a lifetime, but a lifetime is not enough for music. So we need to build music programs in schools that are as diverse as the children who come there. And they're like in all fields. Our organization is no different. In a society that favors white culture and white whatever over all others, where it's sort of been sent as the standard by which all other things should falsely be judged or somehow live up to or whatever. There are real issues of representation in music education, in education in general. Although 51% of the children who attend our public schools are non-white, less than 20% of all teachers of any sort are non-white. And when you get down to Black males or whatever, you're talking like 2 or 3 percentage points, right? And now, what does that mean for music education? Well, it means a lot. And within our own, I want to let other folks talk, but like, what are we doing within our own organization? We're looking at like, what does our own staffing look like? Why are we a predominantly white institution? Whatever, 20% of our folks are non-white, but that doesn't look like the students that we serve. At the board level, our board has made a commitment, and we're diversifying our board. We're changing our board policies. And not because we want to check any kind of boxes, but we actually believe that in diversity is strength. From diverse perspectives comes strength. So we're bringing on new board members, like Brian Hargrove of Public Enemy, and Priscilla Shaw, who's one of our educators out in Colorado, and all kinds of professional development around race and equity. So we're, you can really the only thing that you really can change is yourself and your own organization, your own person. So that's where we're starting. But the work we've always done has been to diversify music education so that children can see themselves reflected in their education, so that all children can see themselves reflected, not just some children.
That's great. That's exactly, I think, what we all need. Dr. Williams, do you want to talk about how this is impacting your organization?
Sure. I mean, this is really what we do. This is what we've been doing for many, many years. Think about the civil rights movement. Think about the freedom songs. In fact, during the Albany movement, Martin Luther King said that the freedom songs are playing a strong and vital role in our struggle. They helped inspire, mobilize, and they gave people a new courage and a sense of unity. Just think of the song, "We Shall Overcome," how it inspired ordinary people to do extraordinary things. Think of all the great battle songs that soldiers will sing on their way to war. Think of protest music that has come to define our generation. Think of Public Enemy's "Fight the Power," all the way to J. Cole's incredible song and music video called "Be Free." Now, this is the power of music that's being harnessed by the Black Lives Music. We believe that we are uniquely placed due to our focus on hip hop, due to the hip hop icons on our advisory board, like Chuck D, like DMC. The organization was co-founded by me and Dougie Fresh. And so among our team, we have those hip hop icons who really were part of the original movement of hip hop into the space of social justice. And so what we want to do is we want to contribute even further to this body of music by creating, more content using our model, our evidence-based model, to develop additional music-focused programs that take on things like implicit bias recognition, implicit bias training, that take on adverse childhood experiences recognition, and providing resources for that. So we're going to really accelerate the work that we've already been doing in the area of social justice through our health equity lens and the work that we've been doing and try to close the gap in health disparities.
That sounds like you're continuing on what you were already started, and this moment and this movement are just adding fuel to the fire, which is wonderful. And hopefully, along with the fuel, will be additional resources that will make their way to you to help with what you're doing. Pete, I'd love to hear what Musicians on Call is doing at this moment. I'm smiling because I'm a board member of Musicians on Call as well.
Full disclosure.
Yeah, well, you know, Musicians on Call is I think in an interesting place as the Black Lives Matter movement really started to gain momentum. I think, you know, first and foremost, we serve all communities. So when we go into hospitals, we're serving, I mean, every possible background, literally. And so in that sense, our mission and how we fulfill our mission on the ground, you know, we're very fortunate to serve the Black community as well as many others. When you look at our organization, though, our organization is not as representative as the communities that we serve. And while we have a lot of artists and volunteers that are Black, that are from other backgrounds, you know, looking at our staff and our board of directors, we have a lot of work to do. And, you know, a couple years ago, we started this process. And some of it was motivated by my own background in social justice and activism. The other part of it was recognizing the work we had to do as an organization. And there was yet another part of it, which was the fact that we're an organization based in Nashville, Tennessee, which has, in many ways, is cited as, you know, one of the origins of the civil rights movement, with the work that John Lewis and many others did here on the ground around civil disobedience. But then also really with the origins of not only Black music, but music in general with the Fisk Jubilee singers, and how that group from Fisk University really influenced what became folk music and Americana and country music and even rock music. And so we started studying that as an organization a few years ago. And, you know, fast forward to present time, you know, Musicians on Call is really looking at this moment, not as a moment, but as a commitment that we need to make for the long term. And, you know, recognizing that this is much more than some social media posts, but this is going to be part of who we are as an organization. It's going to be part of our strategic plan moving forward. And that is not simply to be non-discriminatory, but it's to be actively anti-racist. And I think that's the difference for us, is that we're not simply going to say, well, here's policies that we can enact to make sure that we're diverse. But as an organization, we want to make sure that we're actively anti-racist in who we work with, the artists we work with, the hospitals we work with, the partners we work with, so that we can be part of the solution and be part of the progress that needs to be made as a country, really. And so, you know, we've got work to do, I'll be honest, but we are committed to it. And I'm excited to see, you know, where this path takes us.
That's great. And I'm just, you know, as a side note, as a trustee, I'm very proud of the way that you and the staff dove in and basically said, we've got work to do. Like, we are not where we need to be. And being able to come out in a public forum and admit that, I think, is a wonderful thing and a big courageous first step. And I think that, you know, that's hopefully what we're going to see a lot of around the country as we go through this. Melissa, love to hear from you on this as well.
Oh, certainly inspiring to hear so much of the work that that all of you are doing, and how you're seizing this moment. I think nothing short from big, bold, and courageous steps. You know, I think it's times like this where you don't want to squander the moments. But, you know, when I look at this music called jazz, which you have illuminated, Dave, for us, that represents about 3% or so of our culture in America. What's interesting about that is that this is American music. And so to have an art form that is American and yet represents such a small segment of our body of music in America, is something that we work at every day. We feel this music that is born of the African American experience and struggle and the looting of Black people through slavery is really what this music is built on. And, you know, the very action of jazz really is about giving voice to people who had no voice, people who were not respected and didn't have dignity and didn't have value. And that idea to be able to step forward, as the great Wayne Shorter will say from Newark, New Jersey, that you go into the darkness and you create light. And so I feel that we've been kind of working at this for a long time, in that it is what this music is about. It is about elevating the African American experience and shining light on what the courageous pioneers of this music created and established, and now, truthfully, revered around the world, and are the roots of so much of the other music that we're talking about here today. And there are very, you know, especially with my husband and I, and there are very few artists that don't understand the incredible genius that it takes to really be a creator at a high level. You can play a lot of music and get yourself, if you think about it as language, you know, you can learn enough music to walk from here to the store and, you know, buy yourself your Coke and get yourself home. Jazz is really that music that says, no, I'm in Rio and I'm going all around, and I'm going to go and I'm going to experience all of the richness. That's what jazz really is in terms of what it takes. So when I watch these young people, and I haven't found any who haven't been brought to this music in public schools, who walked away and said they did not get something out of it. They did not discover the human element in themselves, the empathy that it takes, the courage that it takes to stand forward and take a solo, stand back and help somebody else. So it's truly a democratic music. So for us, you know, we looked at this moment. A number of young people came to us, quite frankly, and said, here's where we think this organization needs to improve. Here's the help we need to feel better within this organization. And we've really taken a good look at that, because we were here to make sure that all people had a home. And just, if I could just say, it really came out of the experience as a young child, raised by parents of African American experience and Italian American experience, who were divorced from their family, and that feeling of not being welcome anywhere. And I remember as a child when I went to play with someone, and someone threw a license plate at me and hit me in the head right here and said, "You don't get to come here and play with me." Or the woman who locked me in the bathroom as a 6-year-old and said, "I'm not going to let you out," and called me all kinds of names I'd never heard of. So when I found jazz, I found that place where we could really create, I felt, a harmonious environment with great empathy. And I found in jazz, and I think our young people, and I think that's why they are out there right now doing so many interesting things, raising money for so many causes, because they come from a music that is very humbling. It's very humbling to try to learn how to hone this craft of jazz and be able to stand forward. But when you are humbled, you are empathetic. And so, you know, we'll continue to do our work. We are building more mentorship and greater empathy, and for our organization to make sure that people who are brown and Black within our community, which represents 53% to our in-school programs at about 95%. We have work to do too. That was an earlier comment, but I do feel that this American music called jazz really is a melting pot for us all to learn from, because the tenets of what it is and what it has taken to advance are the democratic principles that we really need right now.
Well said. Very. I like the thinking, and I like the breadth of what you covered in that answer, because you went far beyond what I think what I was thinking we were going to hear. So that's fantastic. Never gotten to say this before. David, back to you.
Thank you, Michael. So we couldn't have a panel and not talk about everyone's favorite subject, COVID-19. We're in a world of increased anxiety and depression, bona fide side effects of this new COVID-19 world.
Yeah.
So many emotions going on all at once. Shock, anxiety, anger, hopelessness. What can music do in the short term, in the long term, to help healthcare, to help health education? Can music be a harness of sorts, and in what ways? So maybe Dr. Williams, you can start us off on those, continuing from your interesting thoughts before.
Yeah, music, it does save lives. I just want to run through a couple of things that really highlights the power of music, and then kind of pivot into this moment. So music, we use music. So I'm a neurologist, as I mentioned, and my expertise is in stroke. So we use music when an individual is paralyzed from a stroke or develops weakness on one side of the body. We use rhythmic entrainment, which is a type of synchronization to an external rhythm, to facilitate the recovery of movement in the patient with that disability. When a patient loses his or her speech, we use music in a type of therapy called melodic intonation therapy that can help that individual regain that lost speech. When an individual is depressed or has a mood disorder, we can use music therapy to elevate that individual's mood, and really bring happier feelings into that individual's life. Even in those with Alzheimer's disease, we know that memory traces built through music are deeply ingrained and much more resilient to brain cell loss. We also, within Alzheimer's disease, and some of the panelists are very familiar with this, is we use music for my patients with dementia and delirium. We use music to decrease agitation. We also use music to decrease anxiety. And so there is no question that music has profound effects on our neurological system, both from a motor standpoint, but also from a cognitive and emotional standpoint. We are in an era right now. We are going through something that no generation, at least in recent times, has been through. A global pandemic. And the effects of a global pandemic are not just physical. It's not just that I'm treating patients in the hospital dying of COVID. It's not just that I'm, trying to help patients breathe better or giving them medications to reduce inflammatory responses. It's not just the physical side. It's not just the hospital side. It's also the economic effects of COVID-19. The homelessness, the loss of income, the hunger, the food insecurity, all of these coalescing around the physical disability that individuals are feeling is frightening. And who does it affect the most? Communities of color. Like everything else, when, white America catches a cold, Black America catches pneumonia. And that is what we're seeing with COVID-19. And so the mental health effects are devastating, not just white America, but imagine what it's doing to Black America on top of all the historic burden of slavery and the current burden of discrimination. And so music has a unique role to play. And I'm excited to see music being a big part of the Black Lives Movement and entertainers within that movement really using their talents to rally and to really promote healing and unity. And so I think that music needs to play an even larger role, not just because of its therapeutic value, as I've mentioned when it comes to healing, but because of its ability to unite individuals and its ability to really help us find that higher self that we need to get through this situation with our minds intact, let alone our bodies. So I'm very optimistic. When I look around this panel, I see the incredible work that is being done. I really have great hope for the future, provided we are very strategic in our approach to how we leverage music in this battle.
Yeah, totally. Healing, empathy, unity, all very powerful. Pete, maybe you can talk about the hope that music can bring to sick patients and also the caregivers who are struggling these days. Talk about that. I know that you're very deeply involved in your organization and seeing everything that's going on the front lines, and I'm sure everyone's interested to hear what's going on and what you're really seeing at that level.
Yeah, of course. And there's three things I specifically want to talk about. Number one is, what we're seeing in the hospital. And the first thing that I would say that we're seeing right now is increased level of stress, anxiety, and isolation amongst the patients and caregivers. So we're working with these folks every day in hospitals all around the country, from hospices to children's hospitals, VA hospitals, general hospitals. And the stress is very high. With the caregivers, a lot of the caregivers that we work with are being asked to do two jobs. They're asked to do the job that they're normally doing, and they're also asked to be part of the hospital's COVID-19 response. And so that's increased the anxiety on the job, as well as, all the new requirements around PPE. Even though hospitals were, in many cases already there, it's also adding a level of stress just in terms of their general interactions. With the patients, we already know that stress levels are high. When you're thinking about yourself or a loved one in the hospital dealing with a major illness or injury, your stress and anxiety is through the roof. Now imagine that you can't get visitors. Imagine, and I know this firsthand, there's children who are battling cancer where they can only have one parent visit because of the restrictions they have on visitors. And imagine what that does to anxiety. And so the stress levels are very high right now. And one of the things that we're happy to be doing is providing that music intervention to at least try to lower the levels a little bit. And the response that we're seeing from the hospitals is overwhelming right now. And to give you an example, typically when we would play for hospitals before the pandemic, we would play for between 5,000 and 7,000 people a month. Since the pandemic started, we've been playing for over 10,000 people a month virtually, because the demand is so high for some sort of relief. And part of that is because we had the infrastructure already in place to do virtual programs. And so while all these great charities that were working in person in hospitals are no longer able to do that, because we had that virtual infrastructure, we're able to continue our programs and provide that virtual relief, which was, I think, much needed right now. The second thing I want to mention was, the research that's been going on. Our head researcher at Musicians on Call, PJ Cowan, and his assistant Torian Valdez recently brought to my attention a study that had been done in the UK. The University College of London just recently did a study of 72,000 people since March and looked at what would happen if we introduced 30 minutes of arts, including music therapy, into their lives. And what they found is that during the pandemic, that having these types of activities, including music, have significantly lowered depression and anxiety and stress levels. So that's some real-time data that's coming in as a result of this pandemic that shows that music is part of the healing process and is helping people deal with the stresses. Because I think regular folks right now are feeling some of the stresses that patients are feeling on a day-to-day basis. And the last thing I want to mention is one of the things that we're working on now, and we've been working on for a bit, is building the virtual infrastructure at Musicians on Call so that we can connect all hospitals of all sizes and all communities to the healing power of music. So what we want to do is level the playing field, create a platform that we can connect any patient to live or virtual music around the country so that we can connect them to its healing benefit, and therefore I think, infinitely help more people as we move forward.
No, that's great. I think you brought up a few things that's a good segue into the next topic about how in this new world, reach and effectiveness may need to adapt or change. Michael, you want to go into a little bit more depth in that?
Yeah, I mean, I think that the next question is really around the change that COVID has brought to you, and how is this changing your organization's approach, reach, and effectiveness? I mean, there are a lot of nonprofits that are just going under right now, and pleased that none of the people on this panel are facing that. But as you look at what you had to do and how you had to pivot and how you had to change things, we'd love to learn quickly how you as leaders were able to do that in the face of such crazy adversity in our country. So, Melissa, will you kick off this question?
Yeah, sure. Well, first of all, I think it's what's happening in the arts is very serious. Americans for the Arts recently did a survey and found that in surveying leaders of arts organizations across the US, some 59% of arts leaders, only 59% of arts leaders were confident they would make it through. That means there are some 41% that are unsure if their organization will make it through. And I know, as I'm sure you know, that is many organizations doing tremendous work, because at the end of the day, it's one person after one person. It is about touching individuals. So I say that to mean that this is a time to be acutely focused and as innovative and creative as you can, as cost effective and as you can. But we are not going to save ourselves by cutting. You don't get better by just cutting off your leg. You get better by improving where you are. And so for us, that meant being very active and engaging. From the beginning, we missed one day of programming. We run programs 6 days a week. And that meant bringing everything that we had online, all of the work that we were doing in the schools, all of the work that we were doing at the Jazz House, serving about 50 different school districts and kids every day of the week. And even our community work, which now is online. We didn't know how we would do this. We didn't have a playbook, but we were dedicated that we were going to continue to bring continuity. We were going to continue to employ our musicians, be there for families in whatever means that meant. And so for us, in some cases, second week of COVID, the pandemic hitting, that meant calling every single family and every single teacher and seeing who was in great need. And that meant working with social workers in our inner schools and delivering food. That meant for our families, some of our families at Jazz House, delivering credit cards. It meant shoring up our musicians with gigs. We've given over 50 musicians something that the Jazz Foundation called a new gig, and we have given about 50 musicians gigs every single week. It meant continuing to offer 25 programs for our students each and every week. And then we went and built, what we found was it was a great time when the staff is fully engaged in the possibilities. When the glass is half full, it is not half empty. When it's about opportunity, not what is lost. We were able to create very interesting programs, and we created a series called the Hang at Home series. It is a series of Wednesday master classes, and it is a Friday night conversation that Christian and I host right from our living room each and every week. To date, we've reached 289,000 people from 35 countries. So when you take an arts organization like ours that I think was doing great work locally, regionally, for the summer we were reaching across the United States and doing something Right now, we are reaching 35 countries each and every week. What that meant is when we decided to open up to the possibilities and had a tremendous team who would harness and learn this new technology that was needed, and the training for families and kids and faculty, that has meant that, for example, our summer program that we just finished 8 weeks this past week, we reached 4 continents, 7 countries. It looked like the United Nations every morning for Jazz and Eggs when they got on to hear about today's efforts. The richness of that, to talk about the blues, and our student in Malawi talked about what the blues means for him, to sit and have a parent in Brazil give a whole lecture, a master class on Brazilian rhythms, non-bossa nova, which we know in jazz, was so tremendous. And so for us, it has meant, like I said, we've been able to employ artists, which right now, about 70% of our artists are fully unemployed in America.
Yeah.
How are they going to eat? Where is their PPP? Where is, where is their, check to survive? And these are artists that have been able to take care of families with such decency and give so much to us. So that was important. But in this time, not only did we meet new friends, we were able to bring our alumni together who called and said, we're stuck in our bedroom, in our childhood bedroom. I'm a grown man, and we brought them together. We created a super band. We've produced over 500 hours to produce more than 40 performances by students. And through this time, what we've been able to do is receive over 1,000 donations. So by no means do I want to paint a rosy picture.
No, but that's amazing.
But I
do all that. We won't be able to hear from everyone on this question, but I did want to ask Dave on this, because the decisions about in school, in person, not in school, and I know this affected you, it affected Jazz House as well. But like, how can you plan for something that nobody's saying what it's going to be? So Dave, I just wanted to hear from you on the craziness of your life and how you guys are tackling the uncertainty about where kids are going to be in the fall in 5 minutes.
Sure. I think that, Pete and Melissa did a wonderful job of setting the stage of why waste a perfectly good disaster. And this is a perfectly good disaster. Everything about it is tremendously awful, and everything has to change. So, but therein lies the opportunity, right? So the question, again, it's about asking if you ask the wrong question, even if you get the right answer, it doesn't matter. I don't think the question is, how can we all sing in our chorus if we can't be together? How can I do my marching band if I can't be together? It's not about what we can't do. It's about what we can do. And what we can do right now, Little Kids Rock works in over 500 school districts around the United States. And we have, as all of us do, have a front row seat to history, right? And as we watch an entire generation of music teachers cross the digital Rubicon with their students, this will disrupt music education and education in general forever. No industry crosses the digital divide unscathed. Look at the music industry. Look at newspapers. Now, this is not to say that everything will be rosy, but what are the efficiencies that we get? And Melissa spoke to some of that. Suddenly she's like a multinational presence. Well, at Little Kids Rock, we always say, if you want to serve someone, you meet them where they are, not where you want them to be, not where you think they should be or where you wish they could be, but right there where they are. So come March last year, it was like, boom, they're online. Well, then that's where we're going to need to be. Our teachers are online, our students are online. And furthermore, what about the 30+ American households that do not have the internet at a level that sustains continual online learning? What about those children? What about the fact, like in one of our districts, like LAUSD, over 40,000 children have not been heard from since March. people literally don't know where they are. It's like they are out of the system. So those, thankfully, since it takes a village to raise children and educate them, you have school lunch workers and et cetera, who are doing distance, feeding of children, right? Like school lunch programs. So we're trying to find ways to embed our content there, send, whether it's bus drivers, going out and delivering the food, can we embed in that? We're working with anyways, there's a lot, and I know we don't have that much time, but I guess I would just sort of say that, it's funny. I was wanted to say one thing that Dr. Williams mentioned. You mentioned Dr. King, and I was thinking about legislation. And John Lewis, the great legislator who just left us recently, he said that without music, the civil rights movement would have been like a bird without wings. And I think the poet Percy said that artists and musicians are the unacknowledged legislators of the world. And I always thought, like, yes, I love that. And our job right now, I think, as a society, is to, or at least for the people on this panel, our little miniature brothers, like music is the original emotional first responder, right? When you're kicked in the gut, when you're down, and it happens to everybody at some point, who do you go to? You go to your fancy car, your big house. That means nothing. It's only the people that you love in your life. And then what? There are certain intangible things. Music is one of those things. So anyways, I just feel like we all have an opportunity, for those of us who have the privilege of working in the field of music, to lean into our role as emotional first responders and let music do what it's supposed to do.
That is such a great line. Super fantastic. Music, the original first responder.
Yep. Yeah, for sure. I think we're going to go to our question period here for just 5 or 6 minutes. We've gotten a lot of questions in, so I'm going to pick just a few or combine a few. I think this is interesting. Maybe we can talk, since your organizations have all been around for quite some time. You've seen different environments, economies, pandemic now. What advice would you give to, or wisdom, to newer or smaller charitable organizations as they grow? Maybe things that are occurring today, or things that you've struggles or that you've been through over the last many, many years as you've built the incredible organizations that you all have built. Talk a little bit about that, and also whether at times you have to say, hey, we're not going to, in this environment, be able to do exactly what we were planning to do, but we can do something better, something maybe we never thought of before. That's kind of a couple of questions all in one, but maybe we can go around the horn and make this the final part of our presentation, and everyone could maybe make a few closing remarks and also talk about their advice and the environment. Maybe who'd like to start?
I can kick it off.
Great, Pete.
This is, I don't think this has anything to do specifically with music related charities, but the one thing that we talk about at Musicians on Call all the time is that it always has to start with your team. I think, Musicians on Call has a tremendous staff that work incredibly hard to put forth our mission. And that talented team, I think, is the first step in any organization being successful, because it doesn't matter what type of plan you have or what your mission is or how valid it is or the environment you're working in if you don't have the right people. So I always say that's our jumping off point, is making sure we've got just the best people in-house. And, I'm happy to say at Musicians on Call, with our staff and our board and our advisory boards, that we really do have a tremendous group of people. And the second thing I would say is that it's worth the time to put together a solid, well thought out strategic plan. A lot of organizations, when they're starting, say, well, we're too small, we're very nimble, we're just getting started, we don't have a lot of resources, and so they think they can just kind of skip forward and skip the planning process. Mm-hmm. And typically when you do that, those are the organizations that don't make it that far. I think the turnover rate for charities is about 6% a year, and a lot of those are small charities that didn't take the time to start with a plan and get going there first. So I guess those would be my 2 pieces of advice from having worked with a number of nonprofits, both running them as well as consulting with them. And then just to close it out, because I don't know if you'll come back to me again, I just want to, thank you for the great work, as well as the panelists for being part of this. I admire each of you and your organizations, and I'm just, grateful that Musicians on Call is able to be part of this. And for anyone that wants to support us or get involved, you can go to musiciansoncall.org to do so.
Thanks, Pete. I went to your last gala celebrating Michael Solomon as founder, and it was incredible. And I hope in this eventually we'll get to a post-COVID world where we'll be all together again. Dr. Williams, would you maybe continue the conversation about building the organization and things that challenges and ideas and how to do that better?
I mean, I have to say, Pete really nailed a lot of the main issues. I think that certainly the team is everything. Even in my own professional career outside of nonprofit, it's always been driven by the relationships that I've been able to build and the team that I've been able to build. And I think that without strong relationships and a strong team, as Pete mentioned, it doesn't matter how great your mission and vision statements are. That's really a cornerstone requirement. So that's number one. The second thing, again, just to agree with Pete again, is you got to have a strategic plan, and you got to avoid mission drift. You can't be a jack of all trades in this business. You have to have a focused strategic plan. As a small nonprofit, you don't want to be overstretched. You don't want to get into mission drift, otherwise you might never find your way back to land. And you want to have a really good leader. I'm very, very fortunate to have recruited an incredible CEO and executive director in Lori Rose Benson, who brings tremendous expertise and wealth of knowledge of the issues, has incredible interpersonal skills, and really has experience, turning a team of one and into a team of hundreds. And so I think the team cannot be overstated. But the other thing is that, again, I'm a big Maya Angelou person. And no matter what it is that I'm doing, whether I'm lecturing medical students or whether I'm pitching an idea to prospective funders, I always am guided by what Maya Angelou said. And what she said is that people don't really remember what you say to them. People don't even really remember what you do to them, but people will always remember how you made them feel.
Absolutely. Dave, so I spent, an hour, maybe 2 hours in front of my television computer with my two daughters watching your online benefit, which is incredible work in this environment to pull that off and to rally everyone in your organization and people have supported you for so long. Maybe you can give a little bit more advice to the charitable world and talk a little bit about the current environment and any closing remarks you might have.
Well, yeah, so I'll just, to the benefit event, it was weird. The virtual world is weird. This is weird, right? What we're doing here. And yet it's also based on pre-existing relationships. Like I've been friends with Melissa and Michael and David. We've, broke bread at your house, and it's like, and I'm meeting Dr. Williams and Pete for the first time, but it's like, these are just extensions of what actually happens in the real world. So at first I was sort of stunned that we were able to raise the same amount of money we always do at our benefit. Like I was shocked. And I was like, well, wait, it's still the same people that have been supporting us every step of the way. So it makes a lot of sense. And the artists that came out. In terms of advice though, to nonprofits of any stripe, I agree in heart and soul with everybody and everything that has been said, but I don't want to, I would just suggest that it always starts with the mission. The team it couldn't be more important to be successful, but a great team with a bad mission, not a bad mission, a redundant mission, a mission that's half-baked or whatever, you know, the strategic plan, all of those things. Like, I mean, I don't know, I've been around for 18 years, so I can remember being really bad at so many different things. You know, that's what experience teaches you. So I guess I would say, you know, your mission, you don't have a mission to serve your organization. And I see that as a mistake in a lot of places. Forget music education, just in nonprofits. They sort of treat their mission as if it was property that they have so that they can have an organization. And I think that it's actually, that has to be inverted. You have a mission that you serve. And for many people, if you really serve your mission well, hopefully you go out of business, right? Like if you're trying to feed the hungry or clothe people or bring music education, say, to every child in America. I feel like the government could do that, and I think they should actually. And I think that, you know, the work that Dr. Williams does, or Melissa, or any of you, like, sure, like you could probably picture a beautiful world where your work would actually not be. It wouldn't be that it wasn't important, but why would it be yours? Everyone would be doing it. Every hospital in the world would be using the music of the people that they serve to lighten their pain and their suffering. Like, why do you have to do it? No disrespect to you, Dr. Williams, but it's like, we're a handful of people. So there's no shame in finding a mission that already exists and join it. And I think that people could take a page out of the We Are All Music Foundation playbook. You're all big music lovers. You could have planted the flag and said, we're gonna do what needs to be done. And you realize, well, wait a minute, we don't need to do that. What could we do that's unique? We can increase the amount of funding that the field has. Let's do that. And Michael, when you planted your flag, and you did when you did Musicians on Call, you had a unique mission. You didn't find other people who were doing that. And you had there was a real reason. I don't really speak French. What do they call it? Raison d'être. An actual reason to exist, right?
That was only luck, though. That was just luck. What you're saying is so crucially important, and it's the advice that I give to young nonprofits, is make sure you're not replicating it. At the time, I didn't have that wisdom, so I just got lucky that no one else was doing it.
Right.
Thanks, David. And Melissa, listen, incredible. Every year there's 10,000 people that come into a huge field, get together for a jazz festival that your organization puts on. It may be only a few percent jazz music in this world, but you wouldn't know it. And the amount of inspiration and joy that your organization puts forth in the events and things that I've seen hasn't always been easy. And maybe you can talk about what you've learned along the way, what's made you better at times, and any closing remarks too.
Yeah, you know, a lot of wisdom with the remarks so far, but Dave, I think that invest in quality, invest in the mission first. You know, so often you'll hear this of an artist. Tell me, do I go get a manager? Do I go get so-and-so? And I remember Pat Metheny was speaking to a group of students first. He said, just invest in getting good. Just get good, you know? And that's what you need to invest in as an organization. And I think when your head is down and you're just working, you know, Dave, I'd love to get together with you a little bit. We've had 18 years with our organizations, but that head down and you just work at the mission. And as Dr. Williams said, you make sure you don't go too far left. I mean, open enough that you try to understand who you're going to be. But I would say in the early years of Jazz House, we spent the first few years trying to figure out what this thing was. You know, what is it? And then we were here doing performances that ended up being a Montclair Jazz Festival 10 years later. And then we were here at you know, doing programming for kids across the community that allowed us to build Chica Power or Jazz Goes to College. But we were in schools. And I remember early, you know, the people around the organization said, well, what are you? You're doing everything. But what we invested in was quality. and getting feedback and evaluation, piloting a program, coming back and learning about it. There's not a single program where we do not come back and evaluate, discuss, seek information. So that would be the first thing that I would really say is really, really crucial. So then you won't have the mission drift because you know what you're about. You know what's important to you. And then I think it is to open the doors to partners and community. I kind of think about it, I often say, I feel like we've opened the doors and said, come in and bring your favorite painting and put it on the house, or bring your favorite chair. In other words, invite people in because they will bring you, especially in the beginning where you cannot pay for all you need. And they will bring you technical, they will bring you creative, they will bring you legal, they will bring you hours, they will just bring so much to the table that before you know it, this thing with your head down just kind of grows and it grows and it grows. And then when you do host something, you know, we hosted on Juneteenth, we hosted our benefit concert. You will find that they're committed to you because they don't want you to go. They see the vital work and they see the outcomes. So I think if you invest in quality and evaluation and make sure that every dollar does triple duty and your outcomes are seen, and I don't just mean seen in numbers, but seen in heart and soul of changed lives. Pete, you really addressed that well. You know, at the end of the day, you're changing lives. And when you do that, I think, you know, you will have a stronger organization. You will be able to build the team that you need. But if you don't get that foundation solid, I think it becomes a house of cards for you. And, you know, that's what I would say. And if I could ask one last thing, it is, I don't know if you feel this way, guys, but I think it's to grow organically, strategically, but organically. The festival, which now is reaching 20,000 people and online tens of thousands of people, started with a summer jazz workshop and 300 families in the park. It just started by wanting to go outside on a sunny day and give music. And I bet each one of us, things kind of started organically. So if you pay attention to what's around you and you've got that strong mission, you will become very, you know, you will leverage things well, be opportunistic in creating opportunities, and things will happen naturally because they're going to be difficult. There is it's going to be an uphill, but it will happen in a more organic way and in a more sustainable way, which is what all organizations have to build.
Well said, well said. I'm going to let
Can I invite them to
Michael.
something, David? Can I invite them if I could? I just want to invite you guys. If you're around and want to listen to some music, the great Regina Carter is playing tomorrow night at the Jazz House online. MacArthur Foundation Genius Award winner. On Thursday, you can see our students, all 88 of them from around the world at Lincoln Center. Jazz at Lincoln Center is featuring us at Dizzy's, online of course. And on Friday, come hang with my husband, Christian McBride, myself at our home as we host the big band, and we will be talking all things big band by some extraordinary leaders. So that's just this week. We invite you to visit us.
Some of us live near your house, so we might just drop in
We're going to stop by.
Come on over, jazzhousekids.org.
So I want to wrap things up because we have gone over. This is the first time we did this, so I want to apologize for going over, but I also think it was well worth it because this has been so incredible. First and foremost, I really want to thank our panelists. This was amazing. I hope you will come back and do this with us again. I actually feel like almost every question that we got into could have been its own panel. And I think that so many of the people who are watching this are other music nonprofits who really are going to gain a lot from this and have a lot to learn from your collective leadership. So thank you for that. And I'm going to do this wrap up in about 1 minute. I want to thank our founding donors, the We Are All Music founding donors who helped sponsor this series and get our first grants or money for our first grants. That's Vincent and Elkins, LLP, Sweetwater Sound, Latham and Watkins, Sidley Austin, the Martin family, Stephen G. Akers Family Fund, the Like Fett Foundation, the Zussman family, and the Williams family. If you're interested in our organization to get involved or donate, weareallmusic.org is the website. Please subscribe to our newsletter, like us on Facebook, and connect with us on Instagram. Help us spread the word about this. We don't have our next episode booked, but it will be next month, and we are very excited about it. And please stay well, stay safe, stay healthy. And if you want us to make suggestions for future topics, email us. So that's a wrap. And thank you, everyone.
Thank you.